So I guess I should explain the origins of the company name. So it's the Emob.
Oh, it's Mob.
The Mob.
Okay.
This is Chicago, and I'm from New York. The idea was that alone, you're really nothing. But if you've got a family, you know, one street tough in Brooklyn is just a thug. You're part of a family, then you have a certain amount of power and ability. And our goal was to take merchants who are smaller. On average, our average member does about $30 million in revenue, and to leverage that collectively in negotiating or in understanding what's happening and the changes in the technology space and in dealing with vendors. So across town, where I'm coming from now, it was actually the Internet Retail Conference, and you know, there's 1,000 exhibitors. You walk in, and everybody's promising to sell you the latest, the greatest, the best. Their solution is going to make you richer, taller, thinner, but I'm shorter, fatter, and poorer, and it still doesn't work. So that's what the Emob was created, and we decided to have some fun with it because, you know, organized crime lends itself to a lot of different, you know, great metaphors and whatnot. So that's what the Emob is, and I kind of got into this space, or my education in payments and online was a little bit accidental. In 1995, I'd been online, but it was really expensive. You paid per minute. And I was working for a company that was a public company, a $500 million company that sold perfumes, cosmetics, health and beauty aids to all the major chains. What I really wanted was a free internet account. So I approached all the big internet providers at the time. CompuServe was owned by H&R Block. Prodigy, some of these guys are like gone, was the number 2, was IBM and Sears. Then the smallest company was a company called America Online. CompuServe and Prodigy couldn't get anybody to return my call. AOL said, okay, brand name perfumes, you can sell it on our marketplace. You'll just pay us 12% of whatever revenue you sell. And you'll get the free internet account, the free access. This was the days before when they charged per minute, right? Then I need to sell it to my boss. So I make an appointment with the CEO, and I was lucky he kind of liked me, and I explained to him there's this company in Dulles, Virginia. It's called America Online. And they were smaller than we were. We were a public company. They were really tiny. They have 1 million members, and we can sell perfume at full margin directly to consumers. None of this. And he said, okay, what is it going to cost? I'm like, I need $5,000 to kind of build this website. He's all right. Just don't let it interfere with your regular duties in managing, you know, the mail order department. And it's a nice little project, but okay. He sends me to the CFO. I tell him the idea, and he's great. Now, I should have been suspicious when the guy didn't even have a computer in his office. But it was 1995. And he's, Eli, if you sell 1 bottle of perfume the first week, you're successful. And it cannot be any one of your relatives. And I've got like 200 first cousins, so it was, so okay, we'll give it a shot. We launched in September of 1995, which is the same month that Amazon launches. Now, if I was really smart, I would have sold books, not perfumes, that you kind of need to smell. You know. But we launch, it's on a Tuesday. It goes live in the evening, and you know, you got to wait. The order files come the next day, and I'm like, let's see what's going, what's happening. The order file comes in. We have 26 orders. None of my relatives. It's great. By the end of the week, we have over 500 orders. The warehouse calls me and says, hey, there are 500 orders piling up here in the warehouse, and we have a problem. I'm like, what do you mean, ship them out? Like, well, there's no payment information. associated with these orders. Like, what are you talking about? Well, normally, we're shipping to Walmart, to CVS, et cetera. It goes through the credit department. They say yes, no, and the order goes. There's no, I'm like, what do you mean? We're supposed to have a credit card number, and we charge the credit card. I said, well, we don't have a merchant account. We don't have, I'm like, what are you talking about? Since we were going to sell one order, one bottle of perfume the first week, we didn't really need a merchant account. So that was my first introduction of like scrambling to be able to accept payments to sell the product. Back then, so there were mail order transactions or card not present transactions. And setting up this account, I say, okay, you're a mail order company, send us a copy of your catalog or your promotional or marketing material. Like, well, I don't have a catalog, I have a website. It may sound, today, in 1995, it took a lot of explaining. In fact, my first, I remember doing like the roadshow with our presentation of the deck. The first third of our presentation was about this thing called the internet. Okay, how it's going to grow, no problem. The next third was actually why you could sell perfume on the internet. But the banks were a little bit behind on that curve. But we got it. And what really happened, we were doing well. I mean, within the first year out, we were selling over $1 million of perfume online, 1997, 98. By 99, we started getting, it was 98, we started getting fraudulent orders. We didn't know. We actually knew when the bank said, here's a chargeback. I had no idea what a chargeback was. I go to the CFO. What do I know about these things? And he says, it's not a problem. That's why we pay the bank 2.5%, because they assume that risk. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Well, $25,000, $30,000 later, the bank says, hey, we're going to need to terminate your account. You have excessive chargebacks. I'm like, what do you mean? But that's why I'm paying you 2.5%. No, it doesn't work this way. How do I get off of this list? How do I become good again? Well, we can't tell you. You're on this file called TMF. There's no Google to search. What is TMF? How do I get off it? Too much fraud. It was like, The Trial by Kafka. No idea where the courtroom is, no idea what the charges are, who to talk to. So I had to immerse myself and learn all about dealing with the fraud, which proved to be very useful. And the amazing thing is that 15 years later, really some of the stuff has not changed. Our tools to profile the behavior and to look at what people are doing and how they're doing it have changed and gotten more sophisticated, but essentially AVS just works the same. Every now and then you want to have fun, ordering some digital product, let me try putting in just the first 2 digits of my address and my zip code and put in, I live in the middle of nowhere. Make up any city name, any street name, boom, order goes through. Nothing changed. But we're always one step behind what's happening, and that's a big issue, obviously. And I apologize in advance, by the way, because I don't know what's been covered here in the last couple of days, so some of this may be repetitive, and I'm the last thing between everybody and going home and whatever it is that I'm going to say. So this remains an issue, and obviously everyone's trying to solve this issue, and the question is, whose issue is it? But let's talk about what it looks like today. What are the players, what's happening, and how does a merchant or a retailer look at it? Merchants want to sell. They want to take the customer's money in the easiest, cheapest way possible, period. Everything else is noise. Technical protocols, noise. I want to pay as little as possible for that transaction, and I want it to be as easy as possible, and I want to get my money as fast as possible. I want you holding it for 2 weeks. So a lot of the payment space is still built upon, obviously, the clearinghouses, et cetera. Now, I don't know, anybody here, Visa, MasterCard, Amex? Okay, so they all have initiatives, obviously, to try and get into the mobile wallet or the virtual wallet space. They don't have to necessarily be in a mobile wallet. We know who they are. The hybrids, so I see something I lost there. So PayPal, which kind of started out as this front end to process online orders for Visa, MasterCard, or checking accounts, has actually, to an extent, lost some lead to other companies who have out-innovated PayPal. So Square, who was really the first to market with the dongle, being able to take payments anywhere, and PayPal, Square, and Stripe, and there are others, but I'm just using these as the example. The innovation that they did was allowing small merchants to accept payments without essentially creating a merchant account. And it is a very important distinction because opening a merchant account for an individual can be a bit of a hassle. You may pay a little bit more with these services, but you don't need to. Now, if you start to grow too fast or you process too much, these become a problem. But essentially allowed into the marketplace the whole boom of selling on eBay, which is, I guess, why eBay bought PayPal, is enabled by these services, each one in a different way. Now, Stripe, very quietly, and anybody here familiar with Stripe? 1, 2 person. So what Stripe does is, if you think about PayPal, it is almost a white label PayPal, but really, really easy. So one of the things you've noticed about if you use PayPal is that, and everybody here heard about PayPal, right? Oh, okay. The buttons don't look that much differently than they did 10 years ago. And if you actually had the displeasure of trying to implement it on your website, it is not the most friendly technology-wise to implement. Stripe made very easy APIs that you plug in. I consider myself to be what I call a PhD customer. That's not PhD, but rather a pushy dummy. I want a solution that is PhD. Take it, cut and paste the code, I'm done. Stripe provides that infrastructure for a lot of companies. Now, so they made it really easy, and their community is the development community. So it's the developers, which is an end run around where typically payments come through the finance community. Here, the developers are like, hey, this is plug and play. This will work really well with our website. It doesn't take, and we'll have it up and running in 2 days. So the developers loved it. The finance people, not so much, because Stripe was holding on to your money for 7 days. But that's how they actually ensured and guaranteed that you were okay. So 7 days, if there was serious fraud, you can kind of detect that and hold on to the funds. The other thing that they innovated, which is the bane of a lot, especially now with the cloud companies, are services or subscriptions. Subscriptions are very difficult for most companies and traditional payment processors. They do not love subscription payments. That's been my experience. Stripe made it into a PhD solution where you just set it, this is a subscription, all the management, the recurring, the changes, really, in fact, our organization uses it. It's that simple. The masters of the universe, right? And actually one that's missing in here is Amazon. So Google, Apple, Facebook. It is complicated because they're front ends for other payment forms, but they're never more than a hairbreadth away of creating their own currency or platform or their own system for payments. It is really, in fact, I know that Facebook was toying with it. There already was, there are Facebook credits that they were using for gaming. Where they go, who knows, but they already have all of your information. And with Google and Apple being the hardware providers, integrating any of that part is not. Now, not for trying, but Google failed with their first wallet. So Google Payments did not work out as expected for all the websites that were accepting it. They did a poor job of dealing with the developer community or the merchants and implementing that. Everybody here heard about Bitcoin, and we'll talk about that on another slide. Bitcoin is an interesting thing that it was a Kickstarter campaign a couple of months ago. Little device, size of a credit card, just this thin, costs $50. And it stores and holds all of your other credit cards. And you use it like a credit card. But it generates a one-time encryption key. So you take it out, you select which card, hand it to the retailer, they swipe it, transaction done. Now this is one of those, wow, it's cool. So I don't know, in the heat of the moment I ordered it like 4 months ago, still haven't gotten it. Probably a few early adopters will use it, and then it's going to be cool, and it will stop, and then like all the other things that are, you know, it will, or maybe not, it will pass, it will be gone, who knows. It's interesting. It's not the end all be all because, but it's interesting. And I caught the last time we were talking about Starbucks earlier. Starbucks didn't start out to be a currency or to be a payment solution. What they needed was an environmental alternative and a more convenient way to punch the loyalty card for the free coffees, essentially, right? Yeah, everybody has, you know, it's a loyalty card. Well, you have the loyalty card, I want you to carry it in your pocket. And that evolved from that app into the payments. Now they're using, again, it's Visa, MasterCard, et cetera. But when you're processing this amount of dollars, just selling coffee and pastries, et cetera, you're not far off from being able to turn that into a platform for other things. The installed user base is that large, and that is, I think, the wave of where a lot of innovation will happen. Are these companies where, in your side view mirror, it's, you know, objects may be bigger than they appear. They're a speck, and suddenly you look again, and it's a tractor trailer bearing down, and they're too big. It's over. Next, there are a number of companies, and they seem to come and go, who are trying to create apps, and there's different solutions, different categories, to get into this space. And we'll get into that. Now, Bitcoin is one of those things, and I'm normally quite opinionated, and I think I'm right all the time, but my wife very humbly reminds me of all the times that I wasn't. I don't know where Bitcoin goes. I think it's going to be different for different merchants. We're hearing about it every day. We hear the horror stories. You hear about everybody, you know, this guy's accepting Bitcoin, that company. It has some very interesting benefits for retailers, especially retailers that are doing international business. We take for granted here in the US that we are going to process a credit card, that the currency valuation is going to be more or less the same from when we took the order to when we processed it. And there's that infrastructure. That does not exist in a lot of countries. Bitcoin is that alternative. So it does have that advantage. On the other hand, if I'm a US company and I accept Bitcoin, essentially now I need to start dabbling in foreign exchange because Bitcoin fluctuates on a daily basis, wildly. So if I sold you a widget for $100 and my margin was $50, and by the next day when I try to settle my accounts, Bitcoin has dropped, I may have lost a good deal of margin. So now I need to manage something else, not just my pure margins. I need to be kind of a foreign exchange specialist. And because of some of the instability in Bitcoin and some of these like crazy stories, up or down, Silk Road, everybody knows what Silk Road is? So you get these crazy stories, and you've got Mt. Gox and all the $500 billion being in Bitcoin stolen. And Bitcoins are non-recoverable. So theoretically, somebody steals credit cards or steals money or bills, they have a serial number. They can be traced. You catch the perpetrators. You may recover some or all a part of the money. Bitcoins, if they are stolen or if you lose them, or if your computer crashes and you lose those keys or whatever device you hold them on, they are not recoverable. So it is like traveling with cash in the olden days before traveler's checks. So that is the pros and cons. More and more companies every day are coming out with solutions on managing Bitcoin. But I suspect that if in a year from now we're going to be standing here, that whatever Bitcoin market exists right now is going to look very, very differently. And just trying to predict that is probably a little folly. In mobile payments, lots of talk about mobile payments, but really, I think you need to separate mobile payments into two different categories from the way retail looks at it. There are mobile payments where I'm using my device as a wallet, tap to pay, etc. And the challenge of that is it goes through the device maker, i.e. Google using their wallet. Androids have NFC enabled, Apple is not. And the consumer doesn't really get much out of using. I mean, how many people say, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave my wallet at home because I have my phone. Now, if you're driving and get pulled over, maybe the Geico commercials where the pig takes out his iPhone and says, here's my ID card. I haven't gotten pulled over in a while. I haven't tried that one, but I don't think they're going to accept your driver's license on your iPhone. Wallets aren't going away. So what's the draw for the consumer? Am I getting a better rate? Maybe it's tied to my loyalty. It's not compelling enough to replace it. The other part where I see and I feel that this is a problem and a growing, or opportunity rather, because every problem or obstacle is actually an opportunity if you look at it correctly. Checking out online, we're seeing more and more traffic. On average, most retailers are now getting anywhere from 10 to 20% of their traffic on mobile devices. Now, if you've ever tried to buy something or check out on a mobile device, and I'm not talking about digital goods where you're buying it from the App Store, because those are the easy part. Either Google or Apple will process the payment at an exorbitant fee of 30%, and you're done. It's a digital item. If you're trying to check out and buy a product, generally you're going to be re-entering all your information. And in the beginning, this is actually how PayPal kind of owned mobile. Because PayPal was really the only third-party tool that allowed it was easy enough that was mobile-enabled. So despite themselves, companies were offering PayPal as the checkout method for ordering goods online. But this issue, so the regular checkout that you have now on a website, so if it's Amazon, they remember your information, but if you're ordering something else, this becomes an issue. The bigger issue is that most retailers still have not figured out what their mobile shopping experience should be like. It is very, very much in flux. Are you creating a dedicated app? Are you creating a web-enabled app? You're making the same thing for all platforms. You can launch a mobile commerce site for $500 or $500,000. And it's one of those things that we constantly see. It's one of those questions I keep getting asked every day from merchants. Where do you go? What to use? And it keeps changing so fast. And the one thing that nobody wants is you do not want to put any impediments from when the customer clicks add to cart to the submit button. You want that to go as smoothly as possible. Every extra click, every extra step increases the chances that you've lost a customer, you've lost the order, and they may never come back. So being able to, now there are a number of companies that are trying to, when I was talking about the third parties earlier, who are inserting themselves at this point by providing a cart solution. Now, there are challenges to that because it is not seamless. So the first time you need to register, it's that laborious process, registering, getting the confirmation email, opening it back up, taking that code, putting it back in, or maybe waiting until you get the SMS message. If there are 30 of these and different merchants are using different ones, you need to do that over and over again. Not fun, not convenient. Now, over the number of years, we get requests from different companies to, hey, we've got this great idea for payments, or whether it's gift cards, et cetera, and we would like to, can we talk to your members about implementing this? Building a direct-to-consumer brand is very, very difficult. And again, I'm approaching this from just a consumer or retail point of view. Discover card, and not for the lack of trying, still, I don't know what exists, 5% to transact, 4%. And that was a consumer brand. They spent a lot of money, and they had a captive audience. A number of companies have tried to come out and say, hey, we're going to be a new form of payment. Very hard to replace and say, hey, why are you better than Visa, MasterCard, or Amex? And most companies who come at it from either a technical or a financial point of view, who understand the workings of the payment system or have a interesting technology, don't understand the sustained effort that it requires to build a brand that consumers will trust. So they peter out. They start, and then they're gone. They don't have anything that, as a merchant, there have been a number of solutions that have been coming out, or have been pitched, to use PINs or to use the equivalent of debit cards. What does the merchant get? I'm not getting a better rate. Why should I spend a dime to implement something that will make you more secure and lower your, but I'm still paying the same 2%. There's not enough motivation. Now, changing user behavior, which is a very, very difficult thing, it is really not hard when we are trained take out our card, swipe it. Not that hard. What are you going to offer that makes it easier or motivate me to do that? What do the consumers want? This seems to be left out of the equation. Payment providers are not asking it to really want. And to an extent, I don't think the consumers know what they want. If consumers knew exactly what they wanted, iTunes and the iPod would not exist. There were no research reports that said the market is ready for this, ready to be, completely blown up. We're waiting, but it happened. So some of this is the tail wagging the dog, because if you want to do it the other way around, not easy. We kind of talked about what the merchant wants, but I think one of the very important things to remember, anything that comes, again, I cannot emphasize it enough, anything that comes between the add to cart and submit order button is the holy of holies. It's sacrosanct. You cannot touch that. I mean, Amazon is notorious for literally, testing those things to death of every single basis point. And remember, the more traffic you have to your website, and you start multiplying those little basis points, that starts costing money. So if I am adding a different or something or a step along the way, I need to be able to justify that that will not hurt my conversion rate. I've seen it in selling high-end watches. So Ashford sold, our average order was about $1,000, but we sold watches for $100,000, $150,000, and we sold watches for $500. One of the things that we tried to do is to provide financing in the checkout process, right? Because even if somebody was a man of means or a woman of means, it's easier to buy a watch for, say, $499 a month for 12 months than to buy it for $6,000. It's just more compelling. You add those steps where you're now asking for a social security number or some other information in the checkout, boom. So we re-engineered that, where we wouldn't offer that unless their credit card was declined. And then we saw that they have a potential issue, then we can offer third-party financing. But again, those things, those constant testing, constant changes. And along the way, we've just seen way too many efforts, and coming from big companies, by the way. Google, when they first came out with their wallet, they were promoting the hell out of it. People were putting it in, and then Google was creating the wrong incentives for consumers. So essentially, Google was offering consumers a $10. You signed up for a wallet, you got $10 in your wallet. So the audience that was using, that was the Google Wallet audience, were all people who had these $10 credits, and there was a secondary market selling these $10 credits. When that disappeared, all these people were gone, but we were left with just another payment system that needed to be managed, processed, and maintained, the code, et cetera. And then Google really kind of abandoned that first version. We're talking about Google, so we're not talking about a company that went away, but a company that said, screw it, we're bored, we'll do something else. Self-driving cars are going to take priority over, but the small guys made, don't get me wrong, I love self-driving cars, but this hurts my day-to-day. Right? This is an impediment where I've invested based on your credibility, and now you're saying, okay, So the next guy who comes along, I'm thinking twice. So what did Amazon do? Amazon's actually, I'm not sure who's more dangerous or who's stronger, but it's up there. Amazon said, well, we're going to help you integrate Amazon payments into your website. we will give you development dollars to put it in. Hey, and by the way, if you put your goods in our warehouse as well, and you use fulfillment by Amazon, you can, anybody at Prime, we won't charge you for the shipping. So they made this like really sweet deal to get merchants on board. Now, Amazon Payments is a bit of a mixed bag. It does work if you sell on Amazon, but it also has, Amazon has a lot of retail as a merchant, keeps them awake at night, because Amazon exerts way too much influence on the bottom line for many, many retailers. And I'm not talking about the Hachette's of the world and the, you know, the spat that they're having. That's great. Those are the two giants. They can fight it out. I'm talking about the little guys who Amazon with one, you know, one little turn of the head and you're out of business. Security is one of those things that, coming to the long way around, I am not sure that this is solvable. Let's an honest question here. How many people know somebody in their office who has like the password on a Post-it note next to their monitor? And you're all in. And if you don't know where the spare key, if you don't know where the spare key is, and it's not under the mat or on the fake rock in the garden, look under the keyboard. You know, that's the other place where they put the passwords. Or, you know, all the security protocols, all the methodology, because remember that convenience is the enemy of security. And no matter what we're going to do, there's always going to be somebody, you know, you're going to use retinal recognition. Somebody's going to start selling fake retinas because it's like just, there are 4 people in the office who need to use the same account. And we only have one user access thing, so they need to share the password. So of course, everybody knows it. All the big famous breaches that have happened in the last 6 months, whether it was the Target or eBay, were almost non-preventable. I don't care what the media says. They came from either spear phishing or very specific attacks, people who got in, and the way, and the weakest link in all of this is still social engineering. And social engineering, where one person is tricking another person into divulging information, is not going to be solved by almost any of the technology that we do, or is really, really difficult. And since most of us retailers, it's not like we're holding the codes to the, you know, nuclear missiles that we're, you know, going to require 80 different things. It's just, again, making a step that the consumer won't take, that you will lose. And I think that if the payments community and the retailers, if we would just acknowledge that this exists, that this is a problem, and that true PCI compliance is almost impossible because you cannot delete the things that are on people's heads, and you cannot control what passwords are going to be written down and held where. It is almost impossible for a company to truly be PCI compliant in the truest sense. That's just the reality. So keep on passing regulations that don't work, that are not enforceable, so that when it does hit the fan, we have somebody to scream at and blame and et cetera. But it's still not workable. And I think that the sooner that gets addressed, it'll be well served. So, who's going to win? What's going to happen? Where's it go? You know, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think that some of the people, some of the companies, or the solutions that end up kind of really taking a big chunk out of the things that come out of nowhere, that incrementally start owning the space. It's the speck that's on on the side view mirror that suddenly becomes the tractor trailer. The Stripes of the world. Even PayPal, back when they were still young and nobody thought it was anything. So when the next pitch, the next most improbable thing that you hear or see, sometimes we may look at it and laugh and say, you know, this is crazy, this is never going to fly. And we'll be right sometimes. But sometimes it will be, right? The broken clock tells the right time twice a day. And I'll leave you with that thought. And any questions? Take it from there.
Anything? We got some questions? Oh, hang on, Ken, I'll give you this. Sorry. Nope.
By definition, I guess Emob is geared towards internet merchants. You're not dealing with brick and mortar stores per se?
We do. So a number of our members, in fact, probably more than half of our members have brick and mortar locations. What the French is, when I'm talking about mid-market, is they are not the mega chains with, you know, it's not the Walmart. They don't have 500 locations. They may have 6 locations. There are really 3 kinds of e-commerce merchants of where they come from. There are people who have existing businesses and they start selling online. There are the companies that started out online. They started out, you know, maybe on eBay or selling small, and then kind of grew and built a certain niche. And then there are the very few, at least successful ones that are, you know, farm-bred, organic, et cetera, made for the internet from the beginning, package, raised a lot of money, the Warby Parkers, et cetera, of the world. But those are the rarities. Most of the others come from the other two. So a lot of our members, you never hear about it, but do very well in niche categories. And there's the omni-channel, which is the buzzword that you keep on using in the media. Is like, everybody needs to be omni-channel. Omni-channel just means I'm going to sell to you in whatever format you want to buy it from. You want to buy it on the phone? No problem. Want to come to our warehouse, our store, and take it? In fact, the trend is, by the way, that successful online retailers are inevitably opening up brick and mortar locations.
The reason I asked was, do you see a difference in the fraud ratio of the brick and mortar versus the online?
Sure.
Which is higher?
Online. The fraud ratio, the 2 or 3 biggest places in the world where fraud is coming from is Nigeria, Romania. Ukraine has quieted down because they've been busy lately. But if you look at the GeoIPs, et cetera, that's where a lot of it originates. In fact, there's one town in Romania that's like the capital of the world for running scams and online. I mean, they've got it covered. They can't physically come to your store. Stores are card present. I mean, when, you know, I remember what I call the olden days, early on.
Target was card present.
It is card, so the fraud didn't happen in the store. The fraud happened from their HVAC contractor, who, not even that, they needed to have access to the systems because you've got 3,000 stores and they need to know what to do. Somebody broke into the system of the subcontractor, used that to get further access, planted a very, very sophisticated, you know, using a zero-day virus to capture data that was being dumped. I mean, look, we're seeing the stuff with the NSA that's been going on the last year. It's exactly a year now, right? Are we shocked? I mean, if they figured it out, there are other people thinking about these vulnerabilities as well. And we'll always be a day behind in closing those holes. Sure.
Because, you know, a lot of focus the last couple of days has also been on mobile. And I almost feel as though we're getting lulled into a sense of, well, there hasn't been a whole lot of fraud on mobile yet. And the consumer, I don't think, really realizes that there's not as much being done on mobile for security. Do you see that as kind of being the next frontier where, or an obstacle for mobile adoption from the standpoint that at some point, you know, we're going to targeting that platform just as much?
It's the old Mac versus PC virus thing, right? Which is, my God, PCs, I mean, they do have more viruses, but there's also a larger installed user base. And if I'm a hacker, I want to go after the biggest, target that I can get. There's a great book called Think Like a Freak, written by the guys who wrote Freakonomics. And he has this, I'm sure everybody here has gotten one of those Nigerian scam letters. I've got $20 million, send me your account, we'll send it. And there's this analysis, somebody did research, like why do they keep on, who falls for this? Why do they keep on sending these emails, right? Like, and why can't they make the story like a little bit more realistic? Like, right, you're like some Nigerian general and it's always Nigeria. Pick a different country. Why do they keep on falling for this? And there's fascinating analysis that what actually the scammers, it really works. That the scammers don't want to waste time with people who are so if it's a somewhat plausible story, they need to deal with prospects, quote unquote, who are going to waste their time verifying the legit. If you believe the first part, then they want to talk to you because you've kind of self-selected into the gullible category. And that's what's going to happen. So we're going to see more mobile. There's always going to, look, there's Bluetooth jacking. There's tons of, they're just waiting to happen. We may not have seen it. It's going to take a different form of fraud. It's going to be there. If there are people in our mass, there's going to be crime.
Anything else? Well, thank you, Eli. I got a call from Jamaica, by the way, yesterday. Same kind of